Continuing from the video yesterday, the game of chess has been something relevant to the RWBY series for a while now, with Salem being represented as the Black Queen in the early volumes, and, of course, with the chess analogy that was used in the Volume 8 opening to show the position of the pieces on the board and the two players present. In the history of Remnant, since the Age of the Gods, there have only ever been two players, Salem and Ozpin, with all of the other people and beings that reside on Remnant being the pieces in their overall game. The pawns being the Grimm and the Huntsman, and the other people caught in the middle. And the stronger pieces on the board, the rooks, the bishops, the knights, being those who Salem and Ozpin have let into their own inner circles. But now, chess has appeared again in the scope of RWBY Volume 9. Granted, it is a different game board. It's altered from the chess that we normally know. There's like 4 rows of units. They all look like they're the same, so they're all likely pawns. And, well, the game's going to work quite differently. As I think might be symbolic. Perhaps I'm reading into this too much, but the game is about to change, as I think Volume 9 is going to herald the introduction of a third faction into the game that Ozpin and Salem have been playing. The Red faction, led by Ruby Rose, with her playing the role of the king, the most important piece on the board. We see in the Volume 9 trailer that RWBY is standing over a chessboard with Weiss, Blake, and Yang as pieces on that chessboard. Now, if we are to continue the chess analogy, RWBY would be the king, perhaps the queen as well, being the most powerful piece with the Silver-Eyed Warrior to be able to combat Salem, and then Weiss, Yang, and Blake would be her lieutenants, her rook, bishop, and knight. Now, let me know down in the comments below which position you would put each of Weiss, Yang, and Blake in. I think Weiss is the most obvious with the Armagigast. She'd probably be the knight, but then rook or bishop between Blake and Yang. It's interesting to think about, at least. And as well, with Jean, Nora, and Ren, Jean would probably represent a knight, Nora and Ren being probably a rook or a bishop as well. Ren would bishop, maybe Nora with rook, since she's very straightforward, be strong, hit stuff, that type of thing. Though, of course, more to her character than that, but still, it's an interesting analogy to think about, because the RWBY series follows Ruby Rose, but she has never been a player in the game for the entire time that we've known her. She has worked her way up from being a simple student at the Huntsman Academies, ignorant to the overall truth of the world and the game being played, to eventually learning some of that truth, becoming a full-fledged huntress, and now having the full scope of the truth given to her by Ozpin. And in Volume 9, she may now have more information and, quite possibly, new abilities that Ozpin and Salem have no interaction with. She will bring something new to the table and be able to stand, quite possibly, on equal ground with Ozpin and the importance that he has. And joining the two factions with RWBY and Ozpin on equal footing combating against Salem may be enough to overwhelm her forces. I still think that Salem is going to be able to gather the relics together at the end of it, but if RWBY is able to achieve that level of importance, to be on equal footing with Ozpin, then I think when the gods are summoned, she will be able to plead her case alongside Ozpin. Perhaps she might even take charge in that conversation. Ozpin, having fought for so long to combat Salem and having thought about things, thought about his mistakes, and thought about what to do for many, many years and come up with no real answers. But now that the players are moving, Salem is attacking, Ozpin is a little bit out of a loss of what to do. But I think that RWBY is the key, that third player that will be able to swing the game out of Salem's favor. Not necessarily in favor of Ozpin, because it's more just stopping Salem rather than having Ozpin win. It's just about having a one player on the board lose more than anything. Because if Salem wins, well then all of Remnant loses. That type of thing. And Volume 9, I think, is going to be that significant turning point, where RWBY does become a player in the game, learning something in the ever after, gaining more knowledge, and perhaps gaining more pieces to add to her own faction. As I've mentioned earlier, we have Blake, Yang, and Weiss, as well as Jean, Nora, and Ren, who likely would each represent rooks, knights, and bishops, but RWBY wouldn't actually have a queen. Maybe that's something that she would gain in Volume 9. Someone that could be brought back from the ever after with her. Perhaps one of the characters we've seen in the trailer already. Now, I think that the opponent that RWBY is facing in that chess match is the Red Queen or Queen of Hearts, and perhaps that character might be significant. Perhaps it might be the blacksmith character, or the Cheshire Cat, maybe, or maybe Little will come back and Little can be the queen for RWBY's side, the most powerful piece on the board. I could see it. We're in Wonderland after all. It's supposed to be a nonsense world, so who knows how this could play out. But let me know down in the comments below. Do you think I'm reading into this a little bit too much? The chess analogies for the overarching story of RWBY, with Ozpin and Salem being players, is definitely present throughout the entirety of the RWBY series. But with just having a single chess match shown in Volume 9, maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much, with RWBY becoming a player on the same level as Ozpin. But also, with this series following Ruby Rose, I think it's inevitable that she's going to gain that much importance. She is the protagonist after all, so, you know, she's going to work her way up to those heights. We've seen her work her way through the ranks from, you know, pawn to knight to rook to bishop, and she's already become a very prominent piece on Ozpin's board. But now, I think it's going to be time for her to branch off and, you know, form her own faction, become at the same level as a king. That's instead of maybe being a third faction, because that does kind of separate her from Ozpin, they will work together as two kings combating against Salem. Or perhaps RWBY will take the place of the queen in Ozpin's board. Though I think it's more fitting that RWBY become a player in her own right, represented by her own king piece, etc. Apologies if the chess analogy is a little bit confusing for people and I'm rambling a bit too much. I'm just really excited to talk about this, as I've wanted to for a long time, considering how it's related to the topic of my second YouTube channel, which is focusing on No Game, No Life. So if you want to hear more chess analogies, make sure to go and check that out. But if you enjoyed this video and enjoyed the symbolism of chess within RWBY and how in Volume 9 it may symbolize that RWBY is becoming a player in her own right, finally being able to stand toe-to-toe with Ozpin. Not necessarily, you know, getting her own magic, but maybe, who knows? We'll have to see what happens in the next volume. If you enjoyed it though, make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Follow me on Twitch if you want to see some games played live. I stream every Tuesday and Saturday, and I'll see you guys in the next video.